Many people over the years have told me they could imagine me being a DJ on the radio, right? And I said, yeah, I can just hear how that go now. Me saying, here's Tom, Dick, and Harry's newest song called Choke on This on today's Crazy Ass Country, followed by their other hit song called Better Your Ass Than Mine. We'll have more on today's Crazy Ass Country after these crazy ass messages. So years ago, I had a chow dog that had wandered off from the house, and he got beat up by some other dogs. Like two or three of them jumped on him and hurt him pretty bad, right? So he came back home all beat up, bad enough that I took him to the vet's office, right? So they stitched him up and everything with this beautiful woman. She was the cashier. When it come time to pay the vet bill, this beautiful woman's there, and she says, Troy, you should consider getting your dog neutered. That way, he'll be less likely to wander off from the house like this again, and it will be, he'll be less likely to get hurt again and get into trouble and all that stuff. Because a male dog can smell a female in heat from miles away. And I looked at her and said, "Believe me, I know. I'm the same way." This one lady was telling me how bad it was and how much it hurt for her to give birth to her child, describing labor pains and all that. Says she has one child and hopes to never go through that again because it was awful. And she said, I know my husband had to hate me because I was hollering at him and screaming and saying, get it out, get it out. And I said, yeah, I bet he looked at you and said, that ain't what you said 9 months ago. You said, put it in, put it in. Saying get it out is not what got you in this predicament. He said, make up your mind. You want it in, you want it out. So one time there was a Longhorn Steakhouse, right? It was nighttime. I was driving by the Longhorn Steakhouse. And how about in the word Longhorn, the last two letters of the word Longhorn, RN, were blowed. They wasn't shining, right? So now all you can see the sign said was, instead of the Longhorn Steakhouse, it said the Long Ho Steakhouse. Or first thing I thought was, dang, I guess they done changed owners and changed names of the place. It's no longer the Longhorn Steakhouse. It's the Long Ho Steakhouse now. So that should be interesting. It was right next to Hooters at that. But anyway, so I go in there and I'm like, excuse me, which one of you long hoes will tell me where I can sit? And this lady comes up and says, excuse me, but who do you think you're calling a long hoe? I said, my apology. Let me rephrase that and say that again because I don't want to exclude anybody or leave anybody out. Which one of you long or short hoes, in your case, long or short hoes will tell me where I can sit? The sign said long hoes, but I guess there's some short hoes in here too. So one night, me and this real tall lady, she was very tall. We worked together, did a 12-hour shift together, and we just, when we got off work after we got relieved, by the oncoming shift, we were leaving work at the same time, and she just randomly out of nowhere just says, "Dang, my knees hurt." And I said, "Well, they should. You've been on them all night." One time, me and a guy friend of mine, it was a guy my sister was dating at the time, right? So we were going to plan on meeting somewhere and hanging out, right? But we never actually decided where we was going to meet at. So while I'm on the phone with him, I'm driving, I'm doing several things at the same time. The traffic is crazy. So he goes, well, where you at right now? And I said, I meant to say I just passed a Home Depot, but I got tongue-tied, and I said, well, I just passed the Home Depot. I was like, I'm so sorry. I've never looked at that place the same since. Go in there now, if an employee was coming to me and say, can I help you? I'm like, get away from me, man. Get away from me. Went into a store one time, and an employee, guy walks up to me, approaches me, and says, "Sir, can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah. Do y'all have any ant poison?" He goes, "Yes, we do." I said, "Well, what about uncle poison? You got any of that?" He goes, "No." I said, "Well, how are you gonna have ant poison and not no uncle poison? Ain't that discrimination and impartiality and all that stuff? I mean, you got ant poison, but not uncle poison." I said, "What if it's him I want to kill and not her?" So a guy goes to the dentist office, right? He wanted to see if he had any cavities, right? But instead of saying that, the way he worded it didn't come out the way. The lady said, "Can I help you, sir?" And he says, "Yes, I'm here for a cavity search." And she said, "A cavity search?" She said, "Well, you're in luck. The dentist just happens to be gay." So when it was his turn later on and everything, they put him under the gas and he goes to sleep and all and stuff. He wakes up later to find that his mouth didn't feel a bit different than it did when he got there. His teeth, his mouth wasn't sore. It's like nobody even looked at it or, checked out his teeth or anything. But his buddy noticed was kind of sore, and as he's wobbling out of there, can hardly walk. Last thing the dentist said was, "Do come again." So another man goes to another dentist office, right? And he meant to say, "I have an abscess tooth," but instead it come out wrong. He said, "I have an incest tooth." So the lady told him, said, "Well, you're in luck. This dentist office just happens to be family owned and operated, so you should be in good hands when it comes to that." This one little kid, that heard that conversation was there with her dad, and a little girl, and she says, "Daddy, what's an incest tooth?" And he's like, just said the first thing that came to his mind. He's like, "Well, baby, that's where your teeth are in love with each other, and there's a lot of grinding going on." So another man goes to another dentist office, right? And he meant to say, "I have an abscess tooth," but instead it come out wrong. He said, "I have an incest tooth." So the lady told him, said, "Well, you're in luck. This dentist office just happens to be family owned and operated, so you should be in good hands when it comes to that." This one little kid, that heard that conversation was there with her dad and a little girl, and she says, "Daddy, what's an incest tooth?" And he's like, just said the first thing that came to his mind. He's like, "Well, baby, that's where your teeth are in love with each other, and there's a lot of grinding going on." This one man was a cook at Waffle House for years, right? He decided to be a sheriff deputy or a police officer or what have you. So his first day on the job, he was responding to a crime scene, And he was talking to dispatch on his radio. He tells dispatch, he goes, I guess he forgot that he's no longer at Waffle House. He goes, dispatch, that'll be scattered, smothered, covered, chopped, diced. And the dispatch lady's like, sir, are you calling out like an order of, like you describing hash browns, or what are you doing? He says, oh no, ma'am, I'm describing to you the suspect or the victim here that I found on the ground, and just describing to you how I found them. They're scattered, smothered, covered, chopped, diced. And of course, his boss told him, said, make sure you don't describe the victim or the suspect or what have you, that way in your report. With everything becoming automated these days, and with artificial intelligence and all that, how, don't you just hate it when you call and want to talk to a live person, but all you get is this automated system, saying for this, press 1, and for that, press 2. Well, I'm just waiting for the day that 911 becomes that way, that it goes automated, right? And when it does, here's how I can imagine it going, right? Imagine you call 911, and instead of hearing, a live person saying, hey, 911, what's your emergency? Instead of hearing that, you get something more like this. Thank you for calling 911. Please listen carefully as our menu options have changed. If you're having a heart attack, press 1. If you're having a stroke, press 2. Cardiac arrest, press 3. If you're under arrest, press 4. If you're the victim of a crime, press 5. If you're the one committing the crime, press 6. Newlyweds, press 7. Divorcee, press 8. If you're suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's and don't remember why you called, press 9. For all other options, including a live operator, press 0. You hit 0, right? And let's say you call and it's like 1 o'clock in the morning or something on a Friday night. And instead of getting a live person, finally you hear the message saying, we're sorry, but our normal business hours are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Please leave your name, number, and a detailed message, and someone will get back with you as soon as possible. Thank you, and remember, here at 911, we care. That's like a Friday night. You get the call back Monday morning, like 9 o'clock a.m., Hi, this is 911, is everybody okay? We got your message from Friday night, and you're like, oh, no, we're good. If you'd have called sooner, you could have went to the funeral. We didn't have since you called, we didn't have the viewing and the burial and, everything else. They've had time to come back by now, something like that. But, yeah, I'm just waiting for the day that happens. So I've worked at several hospital settings, right? And working at the hospital, you try to get to know the patients, especially when they're new and just getting there. You want to make them as comfortable as possible and conversate with them a little bit, show them you care, ask them, welcome them and ask them a few questions and what have you. So this one lady, she was like in her 50s. She wasn't that old. And I asked her in conversation, I said, so what brings you to the hospital? What are you here for? And she said, it's funny you should ask that. They say I'm here for some kind of memory problems, but I swear to you, there's nothing wrong with my memory. And I was like, all right, so when's your birthday? She goes, I don't remember. I said, all right, that's all I needed to know. I said, you're at the right place. I said, listen, I'm Troy. I'll be taking care of you tonight, and I'll be back in a few minutes. And if you need anything, just let me know. Hit the button, but hit the call light. But I'll be back in a few minutes if you remember this conversation. I come back like 15 minutes later, and time I walk in the door, she's like, who are you? I've never seen you before. Are you my doctor? I was like, absolutely. I'm Dr. Pepper.